from the Richmond Journalism Teaching Studio at the University of Illinois campus, UI7 News, your U of I news source.
Hello, my name is Cole Hankey.
And I'm Bianca Reyes.
And welcome to our UI7 News Special Edition, Pastime Pursuits.
Tonight, we have a UI7 News Special Report, Pastime Pursuits.
We're going to see a wide range of talents and hobbies from people in the community. Who knows, they might even be your own neighbor.
Coming up, we'll take a look at one man who has a pretty hefty collection of metal.
And one local musician who has a hearing impairment.
Then, we'll take you inside a greenhouse overflowing with orchids.
And get ready to meet a taxidermist who uses her work to send a message.
And who would have thought that breaking glass could be a good thing?
All this and more coming up on Pastime Pursuits. Yes, all the hobbies we have for you today are extremely exciting, but that's not the only thing that is exciting, because for the first time ever, UI7 News is broadcasting outside of Richmond Studios.
We are taking advantage of every little piece of sunshine that is out there today, so we're bringing the newsroom outside.
Yep, the weather is just beautiful, and this is the first time in my college career a professor actually let me have class outside. I am really excited. So let's get this show on the road.
Yes, to start off, we're going to be taking a look at this one local man from Fisher, Illinois, who collects cast iron cookware. With over 100 pieces in his collection, I think he has the most heavy-duty hobby. Take a look to see what I learned from him. From a searing sizzle to an even simmer, cast iron cookware has been used for centuries to serve up meals. Known for its heat retention and durability, cast iron is often considered an essential part of any kitchen. However, for Paul Chanel, you won't find any cast iron in his kitchen. Paul has been collecting cast iron for decades now. His most prized possession? An authentic 20-inch skillet worth an estimated $1,000 dating as far back as 1940.
My heart started beating because I knew what it was, but I didn't know it was a Griswold, because Lodge also makes these, but Griswold is much more valuable. So I walked over and I picked it up and I about died. And then I looked at the price and it was $27.50. And when I took it to the front counter, and I was literally shaking because this is like the holy grail of cast iron. It really is.
Luckily for Paul, he never has to worry about wearing out his cast iron, as he has plenty more at his disposal. This is his household garage. It is filled with cast iron cookware that he's been collecting since 2000. Fellow collector Rob Gallier says Paul's dedication to the history of his collection sparked his interest in cast iron.
I mean, when you look around at his collection and see all these pieces restored back to the way they were, 100 years ago, I mean, that amazes me.
But not everyone has the same appreciation for Paul's love of cast iron.
I love my Rachel Ray, and every time I cook in it, he goes, "You should have cooked that in cast iron." I'm like, "Well, I didn't have a pan. They're all hanging out here."
His wife Lori says they often went to auctions together. She says one day he brought home a cast iron pan, and it's never been the same since then. In Fisher, I'm Bianca Reyes, UI7 News.
Now, from pots and pans to robots and punk rock, we're moving on from a cast iron collector to a welding artist. This guy uses scrap metal to form little bits of art that reflect pop culture.
After a long day at work, Barry Land welds away in his home garage in Urbana.
I make weld art out of old scrap metal. I got into welding through working on my old motorcycles, building a couple old motorcycles, choppers.
Land has been creating weld art for about 5 years now and credits most of the inspiration for his creations to pop culture.
As far as just influences, again, it goes back to, pop culture, everything from, robots and skateboarders and hot rods and trikes, choppers, music, comic books, cartoons, skateboarding, all that kind of stuff.
Most of his creations consist of recycled automotive mufflers, motorcycle parts, and anything that generally catches his eye.
Stuff I find, if I'm at an antique store or at a junkyard and I see something that strikes me, I'll buy it. Found, given, bought, that's where all the parts come from. This is just stuff that I collect and gather along the way. And some people think it's ridiculous and some people don't, but it's just I'm a big kid. What can I say?
Big kid or not, Land usually works on his projects at night when all his responsibilities for the day are over.
Day jobs first, and then I come home and do the family stuff. After the kids go to bed, I come out here, not every night, but quite often, and work on something.
If he could, he'd be out here every night doing it because he likes it out here. He likes to build sculptures and he likes to be creative. But I think that our, family commitments, like anything else, like anybody else, sometimes keep that from happening.
Land will be displaying his art at the Boneyard Arts Festival this weekend in Champaign. Until then, he'll continue making wild art in his humble abode. In Urbana, I'm Patrick Lee, UI7 News.
Now, we've heard of people being car enthusiasts, but what about a tractor enthusiast? For this next story, our very own Kaine Walters traveled all the way to Indiana to talk to one man who has 2 tractors that are very near and dear to his heart.
2 antique farm tractors belong to Tim Biesecker, and I asked him why they are important to him.
Mostly just because it was my family's tractor, my grandfather's tractor, and we belong to an antique tractor club north of here in Rainsville, Indiana, and we show them every year at that show in July.
There are 2 things he likes to do with these tractors now. One is take them to that show in Rainsville, Indiana. The other is do a tractor drive with them, and I asked him what that is.
It's about a 30-mile drive with several tractors like this, and we drive about half of it and take a break, and then we drive back through, and it's a different route every year out through the country.
I also asked Tim's wife what her thoughts were about his tractors and taking them to the show.
Well, I think it's great. We really enjoy it. We've met a lot of really nice people that have the same interests.
Before it was ready to go to the show, though, Tim had to restore this tractor, and Tim takes pride in showing it off just a little bit. Reporting outside Covington, Indiana, Kaine Walters, UI7 News.
Have you ever heard of multimedia art? Well, you're about to. UI7's Emma Lee spoke to Charles Wisseman, a local multimedia artist, and he uses quite a lot of unique materials in his work. Check out this story.
The sound of the wood cutting machines could be heard in every corner of the house. Despite already retired, Charles Wisseman is just as busy as anyone else.
Art's a hobby, but it's what gets me up in the morning.
Wisseman started pursuing his dream as an artist after retiring as a pathologist. And he says that part of him influences how he does art.
I like things that also go open from one end to another, because when you're looking at like cutting a liver or cutting a brain or something like that, you slice it and kind of read it like a book.
What can be more cool to create your own safe? However, this one that Wisseman is currently working on is a little bit different. It gives you access to self-knowledge rather than money. The safe currently has 7 layers, and challengers will have to figure out how to get to the final layer to achieve self-knowledge.
Unless you know, by chance, hit upon the correct code, you won't be able to find the key to pass this one.
His wife knows how he loves doing art.
He says things like, there's a little blood in everything I make because of mistakes or using sharp tools. You manage to cut yourself, but that doesn't matter, because that's part of the process too.
His friend B. Nettles enjoys his artworks.
His work is very eclectic. It shows there's a lot of techniques.
He's not sure how many layers there will be, but he will for sure continue doing art. In Urbana, I'm Emma Lee, US7 News.
Well, what an interesting show we have so far. We've seen hobbies from all across the board, really.
Yeah, Bianca, what was it like covering that cast iron collector? That looked pretty fun.
To be honest, he did let me go ahead and walk home with my very own cast iron skillet. So you bet that I went straight to the grocery store and bought myself a nice steak, and I cooked that for dinner today.
Was it good?
It was delicious. I'm quite the chef, Cole, I must say. But what's more interesting was that tractor story.
Yeah, I saw 2 tractors. There's 2 of us here. I want to ask if he'll let us do a little tractor race. That sounds like a lot of fun.
I think we'll have to race off into the sunset, but before then, we'll be back right after the break with even more hobbies for you. Yep. Next, we even have, a taxidermist coming up, even a knitter.
Yeah, and got a cracked glass artist coming up as well. It should be a pretty good one.
All that and more after the break.
Hello and welcome back to UI7 Special Edition Pastime Pursuits.
Yes, if you haven't caught on yet, today we are talking all about hobbies of the local community.
Bianca, who would have thought cracking glass could be a good thing?
Right, we have UI7's Kelly Walker who talked to an artist who makes a simple mistake and turns it into art.
Delicate hands like these hold power when making beautiful art, and Sheila Lehman is no stranger to cracking glass.
My training was in fine and graphic arts. I went to school in New York, came out here to with my husband who worked at the university, and I loved color. And there's nothing better than colored glass.
People are often told to step away and be careful when they see broken glass, but others choose to step closer and capture the beauty of it by making it art.
And for some people, they really are intimidated by it, and it is much more controlled than people think it is, and it's it may be even easier than a lot of people think it's going to be.
Stain or fusion glass may not be as hard as a detailed painting or drawing, but unlike those fine arts, you don't have to wait until the piece is finished to feel amazed.
This is instant gratification. There's nothing as wonderful as soldering your piece and then holding it up for the first time and seeing light come through it. There's no thrill like it.
In Champaign, I'm Kelly Walker, UI7 News.
With over 500 plants, all valuing up to $20,000, UI7's Anaja Smith spoke to one man who has a greenhouse in his very own home. All this and more when coming up.
Beautiful, I think.
Meet Terry Moore, a local orchid enthusiast. He's been collecting different versions of this plant for over 30 years and has spent a pretty penny.
I know that it's upwards of $20,000.
Owning over 500 types of orchids in a greenhouse he created does not stop him from having his favorites.
The crazy shapes, the ones that have spots and stripes and hairs on them, and maybe they stink a little bit.
With plant collections as large as this one, it's important not to forget to cater to each and every one of them.
I do treat them like they're babies.
His love for these unique flowers began during his childhood. It was used as a fashion statement.
Got them every year or 3 or 4 times a year. And when my mother got done wearing it for that Sunday, she put it in the refrigerator and kept it until it wilted up. So I knew that it was something special.
Growing a personal garden might be the best choice for plant lovers. One woman says the inconsistent weather is stunting their growth.
If you think about the year and you walk around, no magnolias are blooming, nothing's blooming, which a lot of times you would see about this time.
Still, Moore says it's not all peaches and cream in the beginning.
You get a seedling, and it might take 4 years for it to become a blooming size plant.
If you're going to begin a collection, Moore wants you to keep one thing in mind.
It's an everyday thing.
In Champaign, I'm Anaja Smith, UI7 News.
We've seen plenty of unique hobbies today, but now we're going to go back to a good staple. UI7's Jessica Watson spoke to Annie Abbott, a local knitting professional. She knits clothes for her children, and I don't think they have as good of a perception of it as she does.
This week's newscast about hobbies, I decided to sit down with someone who had a hobby that I too shared. Annie Abbott is a professor here at the University of Illinois, and in her free time, she creates scarves, sweaters, skirts, and so much more.
My hobby is knitting and crocheting. I like doing both of them.
For 15 years, Miss Abbott has worked hard to learn and master her hobby, her passion beginning when she was pregnant with her firstborn. the maternal need to make blankets, booties, and hats for her baby. Over time, her hobby grew to mean so much more than just creating things for her kids.
It's therapeutic. It really, after a long day at work, to come home in the evening and to knit for a little while just relaxes me, relaxes my mind more than anything. Sometimes when I feel myself getting really stressed out, I say to myself, Anne, how long has it been since you knitted? And I know it's been too long because I know the effect that knitting and crocheting have on me of just relaxing me.
Francesco is Miss Abbott's son.
I don't like them because when I wear them, they itch me. They're really itchy.
When Miss Abbott first began knitting, she was eager to give her creations to her friends. But in time, she's learned that not everyone appreciates them without the knowledge of knitting.
Well, I will be honest and say I don't often knit gifts for people because if they don't knit themselves, they don't always care for them the way that you need to care for them. It's not the same as just throwing something into the washer and into the dryer. You probably know what can happen to something if you do that. It can shrink, it can felt, and all of those things.
If you're thinking about starting to knit as well, Miss Abbott recommends relaxing and grabbing a buddy to start out with. From Urbana, I'm Jessica Watson, UI7 News.
I think my favorite hobby so far has been that cracked glass story.
Bianca, I tell you what, I wish somebody would have told me you can make art out of cracked glass when I was like 8, because I was throwing baseballs through my window on like a weekly basis, and a little art project would have made my mom so much happier.
I'm sure you were just an absolute riot.
Yeah, but I also have to say, speaking of my mom, I agree with little Francesco there. Pretty glad she doesn't knit my clothes for me.
Yes, I'm speaking from personal experience. My great-grandmother used to knit our clothes for me and my sisters, and it is not the comfiest, definitely the itchiest.
That sounds like that Harry Potter, the Weasleys getting their yearly Christmas present.
Yes.
Do you have a big bee on the front of all of your sweaters?
Not a bee, but I had a bunch of little flower embellishments all over, and they were itchy and just got in the way more than anything.
All right. And with Anaja's story, I really hope she took some time to stop and smell those orchids a little bit.
I bet she did.
Really enjoy
I
it.
bet she did. But coming up next, I think, is what's even more exciting. We have someone that's a taxidermist.
Yep, I'm bringing you a story on Katie Nettie, local taxidermist who uses her art to spread a message.
And 2 high school students who practice ballet.
Yep, Sarah Olin will bring us that story, and that one's really interesting as well. We have a great show today, honestly. These hobbies have been fantastic. All these, they're really unique.
And there's just plenty more where that comes from music to dancing to art. All this and more after the break. Hello, and welcome back to this special edition of UI7 News, Pastime Pursuits.
Coming up next here, I have a story for you of a local taxidermist named Katie Nettie. She's got a really unique style, Bianca. She takes a very abstract approach, and she only takes animals that have died on the side of the road, that were hit by cars.
Talk about creepy, but not so much crawly anymore.
Yeah, it's not really as creepy once you get to hear it, though.
I'm sure you have
the parts that I use are all ethically sourced. Either they got hit by a car, or they hit a window, or they were poisoned.
When you think about taxidermy, you may think about the head of a 5-point buck hanging from the wall. Katie Nettie takes a different approach. Formerly a high school art teacher in the city of Chicago, she is now a grad student at the university. She works on the conceptual side of her craft with the hopes of drawing attention to the relationship between people and animals.
I think it's really unfortunate that we are making more and more space for ourselves, which is therefore less and less space for the wildlife. Why is a coyote considered a nuisance and less important, but you can have this little dog that serves no purpose at all except sits in your home?
Her freezer in her studio has everything from a baby pigeon to a groundhog to a red-tailed hawk. She makes a point to use every single part of the animal, letting nothing go to waste. Nicole Hilberg, a friend and colleague of Nettie's, said that this is what sets Nettie apart.
Artistically, the way that she's been able to make jewelry out of mouse parts and stuff like that just kind of shows outside of the box things that humans take for granted.
Most of Nettie's representative work is for educational purposes. She has had work displayed at the Anita Purves Nature Center in Urbana, as well as the Rock Springs Nature Center in Decatur. It allows people to see the animals for what they were.
Especially with taxiderm items, is that people should be able to get up close with them. And if you go to a regular museum, they're usually behind glass. And
educating people has always been the end game. Nettie's goal is to become a college professor in the fine arts. There were too many guidelines to follow as a high school teacher, and the idea of helping others find their own style while she gets to continue her own work would be a dream come true. In Champaign, I'm Cole Hankey, UI7 News.
And up next, we have probably the two youngest hobbyists of the show thus far. US7 Sarah Olin spoke to two high school students and how they're preparing for a big show this coming May.
Ballet has been a favorite hobby for millions for over 600 years. The Champaign-Urbana Ballet helps children and teenagers foster their love for this art form. One of these dancers, Sophia Ebel, has performed ballet for 13 years.
It's exhausting and it can be stressful sometimes, but it's also really energizing when something goes right and when I can see myself improving, or when I am able to successfully convey a message and tell the audience something and make them feel something.
Ballet is a challenging hobby. Sophia and other dancers spend 20 hours per week practicing after school. Another CU ballet dancer, Isaac Lee, explains how this challenging hobby has changed him.
It's kind of made me a better person in general. Like, it's taught me like respect. It's taught me a lot of things that you can't really describe, and it's just kind of made me be aware of myself and like aware of the people around me.
Both Isaac and Sophia danced here most of their lives. They have been in performances together and even carpool to practice. Executive director Kay Green watched these two transition from minor to leading roles.
And they love what they do, and so it's hard for it not to be contagious. You know, it becomes very infectious and you want to be part of it, and you just feel so blessed to have this special little piece of their life that they're going to remember.
Isaac and Sophia will play leading roles in Sleeping Beauty starting May 4th at the Historic Virginia Theater. For UI7 News, I'm Sarah Olin.
Our last story of the day is about a local violist. Our very own Ryan Wilson went and interviewed her, and she even gave him a little lesson.
Ashley Gupton has made a special connection with her viola. She has been playing the instrument since middle school, and she found it to be one of the only devices that did not hurt her ears. Gupton was born with a form of liver cancer. The treatment she underwent had side effects that could cause a speech impediment, vision loss, or hearing loss. Gupton got the latter.
I was lucky enough that I only got a high-pitched hearing loss from that. And so I've been cancer-free since I was 3 years old, so I don't remember any of that cancer stuff. The only proof I have is a scar in my mom's pictures, so.
As a result of the high-pitched hearing impairment, the viola's lower tone was a perfect fit for Gupton. As Gupton has continued her viola hobby past high school, she's taken it now to the next level, unlike me. Not too bad, actually. Gupton says the viola has given her a chance to meet new people and travel the U.S. She has even struck a few chords with her boyfriend.
I don't have a good ear for the differences between a violin and a viola, unfortunately. But it does sound beautiful to me when she does play. I don't have to pay to watch.
Gupton is in the works of writing her own song and creating her own version of modern tunes. With UI7 News, I'm Ryan Wilson in Urbana.
Man, Bianca, I tell you what, she was pretty good, but if this journalism thing doesn't work out for Ryan, I feel like he's got a career as a violist there.
I would have to agree. I think one of these days we'll have to call him in and have him do a live performance.
Yeah,
How's
a little private show, that would be pretty good.
But what I think is more interesting is how she's able to play the violin with a hearing impairment. I think that's pretty cool.
That's pretty cool too. That's just a great story overall. But
we've been having so much fun talking to you about these hobbies and this special edition of UI7 News, Pastime Pursuits. And we have our very own special
Hey, there he is, Ryan. Where's your viola?
I forgot it, man.
He forgot the viola.
Come on, man. What are you doing?
I came just for you guys.
Thank you so much, Ryan, and
man.
thank everyone for watching. We'll hope to see you next week on another edition of UI7 News.
Thanks for watching.
Amazing.